Cageside with Jon Morgan.
And welcome everybody to another episode of Cageside with Jon Morgan. I'm your host, Eric McMahon. If you haven't seen Jon Morgan's interview with BKFC president, check out Grind City Media in the archives, grindcitymedia.com. Follow him on YouTube. You can see that interview as well as all of our previous episodes. Looking forward this week. UFC Apex was this weekend. Do we have a new player in the featherweight division? An O next to his name indicates we probably do. Bellator Paris was this past Friday. Fun card. Not sure if there's a judging controversy there or not, but I think it's an indication of how hard judging really is. We'll dive into that. And guess what? 2 weeks away. Dustin Poirier, Islam Makhachev, excited for that one. And Mahachev's talking a little bit of ish, saying, we know he's going to go for the gilly and we're going to make him pay for it. So to help break all of this down, follow him on X, Jon Morgan _MMA, or is it Jon Morgan MM? Jon Morgan _MMA. He is Jon Morgan. I say it 100 times, I forget. What's up, man? How was Belgium?
Belgium was good, man. Belgium was good. We had the debut edition of Apollo MMA 1, which, they're looking to help develop the scene over there. So we had a bunch of amateur fights and professional fights, bringing in some guys from Belgium and around Europe as well. So it was fun. It was a great event. Had fun working it. And it was cool to get to see the PFL in prime time, being over there. Then, of course, the UFC was late night. We were also squeezing in some Alexander Usyk in there as well, and Tyson Fury. So, it was fun. It was a whirlwind weekend. I just got back in late last night. And as as I know, you have made that trip to Europe many times and performed in various venues across but when you come back, you're a little bit tired. So we're jumping back into it. But it was a fun weekend, man. It was cool. It really, I love those smaller events sometimes, because as honored as I am to cover the UFC the way I do, man, there's something fun about working with these developmental organizations, and it kind of brings you back to that old school mentality when everybody's just at square one and trying to start things. So it was a good time. It was a good time. A little bit of jet lag, but it was a good time.
Roger that. I always love those, because a lot of times, sometimes in the amateur fights, it's the haves versus the have-nots. And then a lot of times it's, how are these guys debut amateurs? They would have been main card UFC guys in the 90s. Like the level of amateur MMA is out of this world these days.
100%, man. You watch these like kids that are like 19 years old or 20 years old, and I've had the same thing. Like, put this person in UFC 1 and they legit wreck shop. You know what I mean? Which is crazy to say, but that's just how fast things have developed in the sport of mixed martial arts.
So let's kind of get in. Let's start UFC, because there's two things I do want to talk about there. Lerone Murphy dominates. Let's call it what it is. He dominates Edson Barboza, and Edson Barboza has been that guy. He was one of the contenders. Then he's kind of backsliding a little bit. Is he relegated to kind of a gatekeeper at this point, do you believe?
I hate to say it.
And the reason I say that is because I overtly looked at this fight when I was watching it, is saying this is a gatekeeper. It's put up or shut up time for Lerone Murphy right now. And we're going to see if he passes this test. If he does pass this test, now we know we can kind of really start pushing him, give him those top 10 guys, because he's undefeated.
Yeah, Lerone Murphy's the real deal. There's no question about it. I mean, we touched on a little bit going into it, right? I think he's somebody that, because he's struggled to get consistent appearances, that really just hasn't gotten the respect that he deserves, right? And you ask, is Edson Barboza, kind of relegated to gatekeeper status at this? And the only reason I hate to utilize that term sometimes, I think people don't use it the right way, man. They think gatekeeper is some kind of like washed up can or whatever. It's like, no. He's a gatekeeper in meaning that, if somebody is worthy of being in the very top of the organization, the very top of the division, they have to get through a guy like Edson Barboza, who has been there, done that, who is well respected among his peers, who's dangerous, but did just look a step behind. Like maybe the age and the miles that are on there are starting to catch up to him a little bit. And I think he was just a step behind all night long. He's still dangerous. That's the thing, is that Edson Barboza moving forward, that dude can hurt anybody. You know what I'm saying? So it's like nobody puts their hands in the air and says, please give me Edson Barboza, because you're coming out of there hurt afterwards, right? Because he's going to put you through a grinder. But I do think you look at him now as maybe who has taken, a step back or whatever, maybe a little bit step slower, and is a little bit more of an opportunity for guys to make a statement on. So I hate to use that term, but I think it is the proper one.
Yeah, and I guess I should have clarified is I don't ever see that as I actually see it as a huge compliment to a degree. It means you have that staying power to be that guy who elevates that next guy if they can get through you.
100%. And I know that you know the right terminology of it. I just want to make sure and clarify that, because I feel like it gets thrown out there a little bit too often and utilized in kind of a wrong manner, where it's almost like an insult or to say that a guy isn't of a certain level. But that's not what that term was usually meant to describe. It is that is how you determine whether you are elite level in division. You have to get through that gate, hence the term.
Yeah, I mean, let's just kind of look at his past 4 fights: Bryce Mitchell, Quarantillo, Sadiq Youssef, and Lerone Murphy. Yeah, gatekeeper.
The best.
Gatekeeper.
Yep, the best. The man really is the best. I mean, he's such a dangerous fighter, because I think he's exciting, man. He's always going to be a fan favorite. He's as respectful as they come. He's put together an incredible highlight reel package. I mean, obviously, the Terry Edom knockout will be played ad nauseum as one of the greatest knockouts in UFC history, and it absolutely is that. The guy is the man, and he absolutely deserves his respect. But I don't know that a championship run is left in there. Doesn't mean there's still not a lot of big fights. Doesn't mean that if Edson Barboza fights, you don't go, oh, I know I want to watch that. Anytime he steps in there, you want to watch it because it's going to be a fun fight. I just think he was a little bit of a step behind Lerone Murphy.
Yeah, he definitely was. And Lerone Murphy looks like he is the real deal. It looks like, some really big matchups are in his future. And, he got through a very formidable opponent, a well-respected vet, and a guy, like you said, who is dangerous, that like people are not lining up to go toe-to-toe with this guy. So that is the ultimate compliment for Edson Barboza. And let's see what we have moving forward in Lerone Murphy, which is fun. But something, this isn't controversy, right? But let's talk about a boob punch. Yeah, we need it. So, Melissa Gatto strikes Vidal. I can't pronounce her first name. Tamirez Vidal. Yeah. Okay. In the boob, and which kind of leads to the TKO finish. Now, I've heard a lot of kind of chirping about this, saying, to the degree of, Chris Tione should have called a timeout, or, a lot of things of that nature. Guess what? It's a legal strike.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Chris Tione did the right thing. There's no timeouts in this game because you're hurt from a legal strike. So that was in the game plan. She said it was in the game plan that she saw her have adverse effects. So maybe a boot punch hurts her more than the next. I can't talk about it. I've never experienced some of that, but it was in the game plan, as Melissa Gatto explained. Where I want to go with this is maybe 2 guys talking about this isn't the venue for it, but at the end of the day, I did hear some people bringing up a decent point. If that's a private, sensitive area, just like a groin strike is for a male, what say you? It is legal.
Yep.
I don't know if there needs to be research done about the severity of a boob punch, but the logic when I heard it is like genital sensitive area for a woman and a man, just because it is legal doesn't mean it should be legal. I don't know.
It's funny. You're right, because you're right. I mean, how qualified are we to talk about this? I have no idea. We're not, you know what I mean? But I do think it is a worthwhile discussion to have, especially involving female fighters that are helping to make that the ruling, because I have always thought the same thing. Like, that can't feel good. Like, I don't know how it feels, but it can't feel good. And if there is the protection of certain areas, maybe that's one. Now, then you start to get into a whole lot of questions about, well, does that mean you have to wear certain types of clothing so that you have a clear definition of, where that area is and how it's defined, and, where exactly do we define it? So, I mean, there's so many variables that would make it more difficult than just, as flip a switch and say, yep, we've decided that's the rules that we're changing now. But I do think it is a fair discussion. I mean, I saw a lot of people, and look, there were two very weird situations, two very different weird situations, right? One with the punch to the breast, the other with the headbutts as well. And in both situations, I saw people speculating, maybe there's some acting going on, maybe there's some whatever going on. I give these men and women the man all the put the doubt aside. I mean, they step in there and do this for a living. They're not going in there to
reacting that way to being punched in the face.
Exactly. You know what I mean? So it's like you have to give them the benefit of the doubt. I believe in these situations, they take bigger shots at that. And you just never know, what's going on there. So I think the whole thing was handled properly. I mean, it goes kind of this, it goes that, we talked about this with the Cedric Doumbé fight before and how Mark Goddard handled it, where you're like, man, he nailed it by the letter of the law. Maybe the letter of the law needs to change a little bit. So there is something to deal with foreign objects stuck in somebody's foot, or maybe there is a way that should be delivered as a potential foul. So it is, I think, at least a discussion point, man. I think it is interesting because, as you said, she didn't react that way to getting punched in the face. So there had to be something going on there. And if that's the case, maybe it is an area that does need to be, considered with some protection.
Possibly, maybe, but then the strike still, in all honesty, needs to be legal because, people are dipping, bobbing, weaving up and down. It's a target that has to be legal. And then what happens into a grappling aspect? You're not allowed to go chest to chest in grappling? That's 101. It's such
a can of worms if you open it, right? Because that's why I do wonder. It's like, oh my God, like what are we doing? So I do think it's more than likely, if I'm just guessing, 99.9% positive that nothing ever changes in terms of that regulations. But when you see somebody have a reaction like that, it does make you wonder, like, hold on, man, is this something that we at least need to talk about and look at? Because it seems bizarre that would end the punch, that would end the fight. But it did. But it didn't. Maybe it just turns out that she happens to be particularly sensitive in that location. I don't know, right? Some people are ticklish, some people aren't. I don't know. You know what I mean? Maybe it just happens to be a her thing. But again, because I have no idea, I can't actively, say whether or not it makes sense or not. But when I see a reaction like that, it makes me think maybe there's something to it. So I think it at least warrants a discussion. Hey, now we've got the fighter committee in front of the Association of Boxing Commissions. It does have some female representation on there. Well, I'd love to at least say, hey, can we talk 15 minutes about this? Like, is this worthy? Do we need to talk about it? Is it something we need to consider revising? I think it would be incredibly difficult to write out regulation that makes sense and that is enforceable in an easy way. But I don't know. When you see a reaction like that, it does make you at least think.
Yeah, it makes me think. But John, you know how we can go deep dive into a lot of subjects.
We could go the rest of the hour on this if we needed to.
No, we couldn't, because this is not an avenue of something that I honestly want to get into. It's just the simple fact
you brought it up.
I did brought it up, but you know what? It's because it did have some headlines.
It did.
Over the weekend. And like I always said, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. Just because something is legal doesn't mean it should always be legal, right? And just spark a little conversation. But I'm not the one to speak about it. But people online are chattering, so I thought it was worth bringing up.
I agree. It is something I think it merits discussion, I believe.
Yeah, so let's go to Bellator. I mean, I had a lot of fun with Bellator on Friday, right? Not only because it was Friday, like during the afternoon, so it was like pretty cool to watch, right?
The best.
And it's a very streamlined card, which is cool too. But little bit of controversy in the main event. Magomed Magomdov versus Patchy Mix. Patchy Mix walks away with a split decision victory. And these scores are all over the board. Hard to judge, hard to score. What say you?
Close. To be honest with you, watching it live, I thought Magomed Magomdov had maybe done enough, but I didn't think he had definitely done enough. I do think another word that gets thrown out there a little too often is robbery. I did not think this was necessarily a robbery, but as I was watching it live, I think Magomedov might have done this. Patchy gets the nod. I said, well, I guess it just wasn't quite enough. You know, I mean, all the judges were in agreement on round 5 that was a round that belonged to Patchy Mix. And look, man, that it was that close to being a round that Magomed Magomdov, if he clears that, he walks away with the win. This was a close fight, man. It just goes to show you, I think, number one, the quality that Magomedov is. I think a lot of people are writing him off because of the result the first time around and just saying, well, Patchy clearly has this guy's number. There's no way he can own up to it. I don't think that's the case. I think that it was always going to be a tough, and it'll be those guys could fight 100 times, and it's going to be a close fight every single time out. I know the first time around, it was a very significant victory there, but I just felt it had the potential to be this. So I'll be honest with you, watching live, I thought maybe Magomed Magomdov had done enough, but I didn't immediately jump out of my chair and start screaming robbery and my goodness, what are these judges doing? Because these were some close rounds, man. These were some close rounds.
And the judges were not in agreement on the rounds, correct?
No. There, in fact, if I believe round 5 is the only round that every single person scored the same way, which is 3 people couldn't agree on any round other than the 5, and every single other round it went 2-1 one way or the other.
So this gets into a much deeper conversation, and I love having this conversation. Now, luckily, I ref more than I ever judge, and so I never have to sit down in the moment. Like, guess what? That round ends. There's an official coming by for your scorecard, so it's like you don't have necessarily the time to download the information and then go back and forth, weigh the pros and cons. Peek behind the curtain. You're at a Bellator event.
If you're in that position number 1, especially if you're that first guy.
Yeah. So peek behind the curtain. You're at these big shows. You're sitting cage side. Round ends. Guess what? The off ref, the ref who was reffing the fight before, is usually then the guy who goes and picks up the scorecard. Sometime the commission will get just their own rep or like a deputy, whatever, to go pick up. But I've done this numerous times where I have to walk the cage, boom, pick up the scorecards. I don't ever look. But then I go drop them off at the executive director's desk. But it's in the moment.
You don't look.
I don't look. I put them down. Because I don't want me to walking around and people seeing me doing this. And then
like a weird, you guys like, what is this guy? What? That would be pretty funny.
And I always think that maybe my poker face isn't good enough.
Yeah.
Fuck that. What the heck is that guy doing?
That's actually a pretty good safeguard in place. I think I'd be a little too curious, but that's a beautiful safeguard because you're right. If you just roll your eyes at the score, you see oh my God, this guy.
Yeah. But my point in saying that is these judges don't have a lot of time to kind of download and pros and cons and what do you weigh heavier? But luckily we do, right? We have the time. So, in a fight like this, or let's just say a grappling contest, right? 2 grappling heavy guys or whatever. And this is just all over the board. It's hard to dial in even the way the unified rules and the way the ABC structured these is, what do you weigh more? Do you weigh control or submission attempts? Do you weigh activity on the bottom more than control on the top? Do you weigh pitter-patter strikes more than throwing up a triangle that was kind of close? Do you weigh more of passing a guard as opposed to, whatever? There's you can see where I'm going with this. It's this, snowball effect of what you weigh more. Now, 80% of the time, 90% of the time, you're going to look at something and you say, clearly he was on top. He was throwing the punches. The guy was more defensive than offensive. Easy 10-9 for fighter A, but not all the time. So I just kind of want to say, as a guy, you've judged a lot of fights in your day, right?
Definitely.
Have you officially judged fights?
I haven't. And you know what? I'm thinking about taking the opportunity to actually do that. You know what I mean? Is to actually put myself there. Obviously, for years and years and years at MMA Junkie, I was generally doing the play-by-play more than anybody else. And when you're doing the play-by-play, part of your job was to judge the rounds and put up the score that you had there. And so I've done it, literally thousands of times, but I've never actually done it. And I never had time before, but now I kind of think I do. And I kind of want to rectify that, man. I want to not only theoretically put myself in that chair. I want to actually put myself in that chair to even just enhance my understanding of what that position would be like. So it's something I want to make happen.
Okay, I've been in that chair a lot of times. And truth be told, like, I think that judging is harder than reffing, right?
Oh, I agree.
And I'm going to tell you why. I think reffing is a little more stressful in the moment. You know, you need to be able to read and react and cite the rule and know the procedural effects and everything, like, in the moment, right? I think you have to work under pressure. Being a ref is a lot harder of working under pressure. But the harder part of being a judge is the subjectivity of stuff. There's zero subjectivity in refereeing, and that's why I love it. I am an A to B, black and white, up is up, down is down, left is left, right is right type guy. So judging when it gets into subjectivity is a little bit harder to me. But that's why I think judging is harder. So with the subjectivity, you know, I'm going to lay out a scenario for you. You know, fighter A takes down fighter B. He took him down. Let's say the strikes were even. Right now, we're just getting into a grappling contest.
Right.
Fighter A takes down fighter B. Has to work for it. Right. Gets the takedown, elevates, turns it, bam, good slam. Fighter B recovers guard right away. Starts, you know, doing the side slaps, whatever. Keeps throwing up random submissions that we know aren't close, but at least he's threatening with them. All while every 15 seconds, fighter A postures up, throws a strike, and 50% of the time that strike lands.
Oh, wow. This is tough, right? Because again, at that point, now we know we've got the big takedown. That is scoring. That's impactful. And the way you laid it out, that was an impactful takedown. It was not simply a change of position. So that is worth something. Now we're also talking about posturing up and throwing down, which we know those are going to be the more significant blows than punching off of your back, right?
Okay,
little side slap off your back.
He keeps his head down and he chael sunnins them.
Ooh. Well, now we got to try to weigh the impact of these shots, but you know somebody throwing off their back isn't as impactful as the one that's the person on top. Now you got to look at these submissions, because I agree, submissions that don't actually get close to anything whatsoever, like how does that really do anything? If it wasn't even a sweep, if it was just you threw your legs up, but the man immediately pushed it right back down and settled in your guard, this is why it becomes so hard.
You see this all the time where a fighter, you know, like throwing like Chael did against Anderson Silva, right? Head buried down in his stomach, just throwing some punches, takes a break. In that break, fighter throws one arm in between his leg, throws up a triangle. The minute the legs come up, the fighter is able to pull back right away and right back down, rinse and repeat.
See, to me, those aren't effective submissions, so I'm still going with the guy that's in top position. If we never even got the submission locked in, I know you were trying things, but that's like me saying I tried to take you down over and over. I'm not supposed to reward the fact that you just tried and didn't succeed with it. So it would come down to how close those submissions were. Okay. Were they close at all?
No,
and
I hear you.
Again,
I hear you.
weigh in the shots and then weigh in the shots.
I hear you. Now let's change the scenario up just a little bit more. Okay, instead of constantly the guy on top throwing the chael sun in where his face is buried, now he does that in 5-second increments once every 30 seconds.
Now I'm going with the guy underneath. Now I'm going with the guy underneath, because at least the guy underneath is trying to make something happen. I do believe you should be able to win rounds off of your back. Simply because you are on the bottom does not mean you should not be able to win rounds. And if the person on top is doing that little, which it seems to me at that point, we're talking about a guy that's not doing much with top position. Now I got to reward the guy that's at least trying something on the bottom.
Okay. I think that, and that's why that chair is tough, because I'm going to lay out and I tend to agree with you. But fighter A imposed his game plan, had the big slam, and put it where he wanted it.
Right.
Right. So he's clearly comfortable there in the fight. He put his opponent to where his opponent didn't want to be, and the opponent couldn't get up and could not get a submission, and only got, I'm not even going to say mediocrely close to a submission. He just was throwing up attempts that were easily thwarted off.
And that's right, because I believe the actual term in the scoring criteria is merely holding a dominant position shall not be a primary factor in assessing dominance. What the fighter does with those positions is what must be assessed, which is why it gets tricky, right?
Right.
Because how effective is what is being done.
But the fight didn't start there. That's where,
fair point as
right?
well.
So I'm just saying is that fans, and I'll put we as fans a lot of times, we're not working in official capacity. We are not viewing it through a lens, a reality lens that a judge really is. And
true.
so we can see how a, Patchy mix fight that was as close as this, that and my whole point in doing this is that no three judges scored the same damn round the same, except round number 5. And you understand, just by walking through this little scenario right now, you understand how that happens. Or at least I can.
100%. I think it's fun to be critical, and it's fun to take shots at people, and everybody likes to have the knee-jerk reaction. But the reality of how difficult it can be sometimes and how close these rounds are sometimes, it can't be overstated. Sometimes it's difficult. And I think this was one of those kind of fights. So, I got to take the challenge. I got to do it. Well, we were already talking about, maybe potentially going out to the ABC conference. I know there's usually some. I've never even taken the full classes before. I've sat down around on things, and I've been involved in parts of it, but I've never done like the full refereeing classes, the full judging classes. Never had time to before. Usually I was covering it as a journalist or a media member, but now that's something I actually want to do as well, man. I really wanted to just again to help better my own knowledge, better my own understanding as well. I saw Lerone Murphy was posting on Twitter this weekend that she just went and took a judging seminar in Texas underneath Blake Grice. So pretty cool, man. I mean, I think it's worth doing if you can.
Yeah, and the great thing about those, especially like good ones, I remember when I took my first one ever from Kevin McDonald reffing and my ABC course, and he played this like fight that was just an amazing fight, right? And he's like, and then it got very sloppy at the end, and he's like, okay, what did you guys think? And I'm like, that was an amazing fight. I enjoyed watching. I mean, obviously, these guys just willed themselves through pure exhaustion. He's like, yeah, they did. And that kid died of renal failure 2 days later.
Jesus.
Just because they're willing themselves doesn't mean that you need to let them go through it.
Wow.
Right? And that always stuck with me, right? Like that was one of the most powerful. So laying out scenarios where it's like, hindsight being 2020, but as a ref or as a judge, right? Or let's say judge for this point, I got dark really quick, but as a judge, you watch something and you're needing to make that split second. A judge does not get to go back and look at the scoring criteria. He does not get to go back and look at the CompuBox or the fight stats. He doesn't get that.
Nope.
It's tough job. It really is. And all these keyboard warriors, like it's hard to sit in that seat. And when you got somebody like me being like, Mike Bell, I need your card. John Morgan, I need your card. You could just be like, fight away. Boom.
Yeah, and again, and I'll say it again, people need to remember the reality of the situation. If you're in that position number 1, literally when the bell sounds, there's somebody there, the score that's asking for your score. Whereas if maybe you're in seat number 2 or seat number 3, at least you get an added 2 to 3 beats of the person has to walk his way around the cage to you. But you're right, if you're in that first spot, because I see it all the time. Normally, spot number 1 at the UFC events happens right in front of press row right there, and it's just like, as soon as the bell sounds, that person's right behind you, tapping you on the shoulder, saying, who you got? And you don't even get that added beat of like, hold on. Yep. No, process this. Yep. No, I'm right. Okay. Yeah, let's go. No, it's instant. So it's not an easy job, man. It's a thankless job. That's for sure.
Yeah. This was a little fun exercise. So I like that we just did this.
Now it got me even more fired up for wanting to get to a seminar soon and get to a class and maybe sit myself through one of these, man. I need to do so. And yeah, put myself, even if it ends up being like a shadow judging type situation or something where it's like, hey, I'm not actually on a commission's payroll or doing it, but just doing it in a shadow judging situation. Maybe that'll be it. But it's one of the few things in the sport I haven't done. So it might be kind of, I really want to do it at some point.
Yeah. Super cool. 2 weeks away, brother.
Ooh.
2 weeks away.
I'm ready.
I love pay-per-views, and I love one especially with fighters that I'm like, that I know are fighters, right? Dustin Poirier is a fighter, and he's taking on the man, the number, what is he, number 2 pound for pound?
I think he's number 1 pound for pound now.
Okay, number 1 pound for pound is Islam Makhachev versus Dustin the Diamond Poirier from the Prudential Center, Newark, New Jersey, Saturday, June 1st. What more can you want from a main event? You got the guy that seems to be unbeatable. You got Dustin Poirier, who is just this guy it's his last shot at this title, but a guy who probably deserves it more than anybody in the history of an organization. And with that guy being Dustin Poirier, if he didn't have the Eagle, Khabib Nurmagomedov in the division at the time, probably would be the undisputed champion. Oh, and then just timing has it, father's plan comes to fruition. He's got the guy that they said was always going to be the guy and even could have been the guy back when Khabib was there. Now reigning the division, you're almost snake bit with timing. But I guess that almost what's made Dustin so beloved is he's always that guy who's like, I'm going forward. But this makes an interesting matchup. Dustin the Diamond Poirier is going to give anybody in this world a problem on the feet. And this is going to be a guy who will not stop.
He absolutely won't. I was actually, man, it was funny. The plane back from Belgium, I was already starting to think to kind of shift my focus to, okay, the next UFC event. And I was getting excited because walking through all the same scenarios, you are as well. On the one hand, it's like, it's probably his last opportunity at winning the title, but he's a guy in Dustin Poirier that you just can't ever count out, right? Even when the odds are stacked against him, like that dude's going to fight. And hey, if he's down 4 rounds to none going into the 5th round, he's got that mental strength and fortitude that he's not giving up. You know what I mean? He's not just packing it in saying, oh, well, I'm happy to be here. That's not who he is. That's not the warrior that he is. He's a battler. And there's all these demons that can be exercised in one night if Dustin Poirier is able to come out and pull off this upset. And it would be a stunning upset according to the odds makers. But if you look at a guy that's capable of doing it, it's Dustin Poirier. And if you look at a guy find me a guy that's more beloved in the sport universally than Dustin Poirier for the type of man he is behind the scenes, the type of man he is representing the sport. Just an absolute class human being. But then you have Islam Makhachev, who, man, you simply cannot take away from how good he is. And I feel like people have doubted him every step along the way. Yes, he was in the shadow of Khabib Nurmagomedov for a long time. Khabib has stepped away and given him this opportunity. Now he's talking about potentially, defending here and maybe moving up to 170 and looking at that as well. A guy that's just in peak form right now. It is the continued representation of the Nurmagomedov, and father's plan, as you said. It's a hell of a main event, man. It's a hell of a main event. It's one that Dustin Poirier says, hey, he's still going to jump that ghillie if it's there. I don't know if you can coach it out of him. I don't think you can coach it out of him to not jump for the guillotine choke. I might, if I'm Mike Brown, I might be telling him not to. But, man, I love this fight. I cannot wait for UFC 302.
The timing of who he's had reigning the division when he's gotten his chance, though, arguably probably the 2 best lightweights of all time, right?
Mm-hmm. No question about it. They're in the discussion. You can't have the discussion of the greatest ever in the lightweight division without their names being mentioned. No question.
So, timing is everything, as they say, but I want to go back to the ghillie, right? And he's just saying he's going to go for it. Like he said, I'm going to go. They tell me not to, but I'm going to go for it. And Islam said something this past week of saying when that got brought up and that Khabib, if you recall in the Khabib Nurmagomedov Dustin Poirier fight, Dustin Poirier was deep in on a guillotine. And everybody's like, this is close. Nurmagomedov was turning red. Everybody thought it was there. But Islam said that Khabib intentionally put himself there just to tire out Dustin Poirier. You believe that?
I do. I believe
I do too.
Enough. I know, right? I absolutely do. Most people would say, no, there's no way. But man, you set those traps, right? You set those baits and say, all right, take this. I know you're going to take it. I know exactly what it is. Now, if you know, if you take something I've never seen before, like maybe it gets you by surprise, right? But if you know, like, hold on, I mean, tell me you haven't been in a grappling, even a competitive grappling match where you're like, let me leave this arm here because I want them to grab this arm, because as soon as they do, I know exactly what I'm doing. You know, I'm having trouble getting out of this position, but if I give them this, they'll give me that, and I go. So I 100% believe that he did it. And I 100% believe that Islam will do the same thing as well. He feels confident enough in himself that he won't worry about if Dustin Poirier gets himself in that position. But, man, I mean, look, I mean, we're talking about storybook endings. If we're putting the Hollywood movie together for Dustin Poirier, he jumps the Gilly.
Imagine if.
Gilly. Yeah. And this time, the Gilly's in there, and Islam's calm, and then he starts to panic because he feels the you know what I mean? And he sinks it. If he wins it with that, that's Hollywood at its finest. I just don't know if I would recommend actually putting himself in that position. God bless him as much as we love Dustin Poirier. I don't know if he needs to jump the Gilly.
I just don't think that. One, I do think he'll put himself in it.
Mm-hmm.
2,
100%.
I don't think Habib respected it as much as he should have, because when you said like, oh, what if storybook ending, the panic sets in and you can't get out. I've watched that fight multiple times. The panic set in with Magomedov. It did. I watched it. I think it was deeper than he ever thought it was going to get. Yep. I thought it was tighter and the grip was stronger than he ever thought it was going to be. And if you even watch it, I mean, he had to, not posture up, tripod up so high and just kept on diving to the hip to create any space possible, and it took him multiple attempts to finally get it. But then guess what? He got out, took his back, choked him, and it's all over.
It's crazy. It's amazing. But yeah, you're right. No, it was much more effective, I think, than he assumed that it would be. And look, I mean, if you're Islam, I don't think you necessarily want to, automatically put yourself in that position, but I do believe he will. I do believe he feels confident enough in himself. Like, dude, we drill this. I've been drilling this since I was, a little kid. What are you talking about? He's not going to get it on me. So, but it's dangerous. It's dangerous to do that. Yeah, what a story it would be if Dustin Poirier not only would win the undisputed lightweight title, but to win it with the guillotine choke, his nemesis, the Gilly. I mean, come on.
Now, I want to break this fight down. I don't want to do it this week. Let's do it next week, because I think, there are spots that Poirier has very great chances in, right? I don't believe I'll give you this little nugget. I don't believe the entry for Islam Makhachev on the shot is as good as Magomedov was.
I agree with that. 100%.
So I think there are major opportunities here for Dustin. Whether he can do it, we'll break it down next week. But I think everybody, I was going to say the people's main event, but the people's main event is the main event. But how can you not love Sean Strickland and Paulo Costa in the co-main event? I'm interested to see this. I'm interested to see the plan of attack that Costa has. I know what the plan of attack is going to be for Sean Strickland.
Yeah.
But can that Philly show withhold just the pure ferocity that Paulo Costa brings? And that's the question.
It's definitely a question, right? Especially if we're talking about a shorter fight, and we'll see. You know what I mean? Can because early on the power is going to be there. There's no question about it, right? But we would all think the further this thing goes, the more it favors Sean Strickland, right? So I mean, it's going to be early. Those first opening 5 minutes, especially maybe opening 8 minutes, maybe even opening 10. I mean, that's where Paulo Costa really has to capitalize, because the longer this thing goes, the more that Sean Strickland is going to be a problem. And Sean has got the confidence now, you know what I mean? Being champion and everything that he's accomplished, he's not going to back down in the face of anybody. So this is an intriguing one. And look, before it even gets to Saturday night, the build up to this is going to be fun. The press conference between these two is going to be fun. The ceremonial, stare downs, face offs, they're going to be fun. I mean, it's going to be weird, because I do think this one, you said the people's main event, the main event, but I think this one is going to steal the show. I think this is going to get the lion's share of the attention in terms of talking and, a little bit of back and forth, because Islam and Dustin, I mean, they're both respectable guys, right? I mean, they're not going to necessarily want to needle each other a little bit. Dustin has a little fun, but normally it's not, trash talking per se. And Islam, he has a little same thing, kind of the dry, wry little digs here and there.
I love Islam's trash talking.
He's
He has an A+ trash talk that people don't think he's talking trash because he's so haphazard with it. He's so dismissive with it.
It's subtle. It's subtle, man. I love it. I absolutely love it. But the co-main event, man, I think is the one that really is going to steal the lion's share of the attention of kind of the discussion going back and forth. I mean, some other fun fights on there as well, but I think that's the one that everybody's going to be talking about all fight week long outside of the main event for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, if this was a 5-round fight, Sean Strickland all day. It's not a 5-round fight. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they literally only use those for non-title main events, right?
Correct.
Okay. Hey, they've made an exception here and there. I'm surprised that Strickland didn't insist on it.
Oh no, this is a 5-round fight. This is a 5-round fight. That's right. Because I remember it was announced. This is a 5-round. That's what I'm saying. So early on, that's what I'm saying. Early on, he's got to survive Paulo Costa, but the later this thing goes, and you're 100% right. Sean Strickland's not taking this in a 3-round fight. Like, he's taking it in a 5-round fight. So yeah, 100%. The longer this thing goes, it starts getting really, really intriguing because that's when he just starts piecing it up.
Because Paulo Costa has that size, all those muscles that require energy. He definitely slows down in fights. His heart doesn't slow down. That guy powers through everything. I mean, let's go back to the Yoel Romero fights and whatnot. I mean, this dude's I'm a huge Paulo Costa fan, and Sean Strickland fan, by the way. But it's can Sean weather the storm, and moreover, can Costa bring the storm early? Like, is he willing to really go after it as hard as he can? Because that's what I think it takes. Because I think if he does, he possibly can. If he doesn't and wants to go tit for tat and doesn't put Sean Strickland on his back foot, it could be a long night. You know what I mean? It could be a long night. That's my 100%. Initial. I'm going to do a little more research and I'll break it down more next week, but that's just my 2 cents right now.
No, dude, I think that's the smart one. I mean, obviously there's more subtle details along the way that you can pick up on and be ready. But I mean, that's that's the basis of this fight, right? So, I mean, unbelievable 1-2 punch. And come on, man. How about the fact that, look, all right, we get to catch our breath this week, right? This is the weekend. We get to catch it right now. There will be some grappling on UFC Fight Pass on Friday night we can talk about, so you might want to tune into that. My man CM Punk will be there as well, so maybe you want to tune in to see a little bit of that. But we get to catch our breath in terms of MMA, right? Then we come back with UFC 302, and we go, oh, man, can't wait for that. Then we're just 4 weeks away at that point from the return of Conor McGregor, and before we even get there, we get Whitaker and Chimaev in Saudi Arabia on ABC in an afternoon event on June 26th. So tell me what these next 4 weeks are going to be like in the UFC. I mean, have fun this week, catch your breath, watch a little Fury Professional Grappling on Friday night, but get yourselves ready because we're going to be going straight into 302, and then the schedule gets nuts for the summer.
I don't have it in front of me. I meant to print it out and get it in front of me, but the man from Chicago finally gets his shot. Belal Muhammad, Leon Edwards from Manchester, England. It took a while, but it got done.
It did. It took a long time, man. UFC 304. I think Belal he was trying to say that he wasn't getting uneasy, but I think he was getting a little bit uneasy. So it's going to take place UFC 304, July 27th. Manchester, England. You got that 1-2 title shot atop the bill. Tom Aspinall and Curtis Blaydes in there as well. Which it's kind of weird, right? You got these 2 fights in the main and co-main that are rematches, but they're like rematches of fights that had bizarre endings, right? That didn't really have an answer to it. Sometimes when it's a rematch, you're like, I already saw that. I'm pretty confident that I know how it's going to go. Aspinall and Blaydes, we never even got to see, and I think Blaydes has the potential to be one of the toughest matchups that Tom Aspinall has in the division. So I love that fight. And Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad, man, this win streak that Belal's on. I mean, first of all, that fight ended in weird fashion. But second, I mean, they're not even the same guys since that. I mean, that was a lifetime ago at this point in their careers. So,
right,
man, very, very, very intriguing matchup. It's one that's happening super late at night in England. It's funny, I was just over in Europe talking with a lot of European fans, some European media. that are honestly a little bit disappointed that they got to do like the 4 o'clock in the morning thing when it's on their local soil. And I get it. Like I do, like even just this past week, I'm telling you, bro, this past weekend, just being over there and watching the UFC event in the middle of the night, like anybody that has become a hardcore MMA fan while living in Europe the entire time, and I mean, deserves kudos, because it is not easy to do to stay up that late and watch those events. So I get it. I get the pushback. But as it stands now, it's going to be a prime time show for us in the United States.
All righty. I just want to say, like, do not sleep on Curtis Blaydes.
No.
Do not sleep.
Better not.
His only 4 losses: Sergey, Derek Lewis, and Francis Ngannou twice. Those are, if he can make, like, this is where we're going to test, in my opinion, unless he gets caught early, which Aspinall can completely catch him early.
Yep.
This is where we're going to test, like, Aspinall's full range of tools over an extended period of time. And you know what? I am very intrigued by this matchup, because I don't think Curtis Blaydes gets the recognition that he really should. And I want to go down and look at Tom Aspinall. All right. He's got 3 losses on his career, and only one of them is, a legit loss. Okay. So, back in 2015, he lost by heel hook. All right. I'm pretty sure he shirred up any submission problems in his game. Then he lost in 2016 to an illegal downward elbow, 12-6, I would assume. And then he had the loss to Curtis Blaydes, where his knee gave out 15 seconds into the fight. But this guy's been out of the first round on 3 occasions in 15 fights. Okay? Or I'm sorry, in 17 fights.
That's crazy.
He's been out of and he's only gone into the second round 3 times.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
So, now if Curtis Blaydes can close that distance and make him work, man, we are going to get to see what Aspinall is really all about, right? We know he's a firecracker. We know that. But
I love this fight. This is the fight that I wanted to see. As you said, the way that it ended the first time, we got robbed of an opportunity to see a fight that I really, and I am so high on Tom Aspinall, man. His skills, like, unbelievable. If you want to argue that the guy's the champ now, that you want to say that John and Stipe don't deserve that honor because of how long they're sitting out or whatever, like, I won't necessarily agree with you, but I certainly won't begrudge you, because I understand the argument. And I think the future is so bright for Tom Aspinall. And look, he could absolutely steamroll Curtis Blaydes too. He's that good. He could absolutely steamroll him. But if he doesn't, and again, I think a lot of people are quick to overlook Curtis Blaydes. I think they are quick to write him off. Obviously, he'll admit he's not the greatest trash talk or whatever. He doesn't necessarily love being in front of the cameras a lot, but he's very, very good. He's very effective, and he's got very good wrestling. And if he can survive that early onslaught and kind of drag this thing out, and as you said, work and make him work and stretch this thing out and see. I mean, I was really, really excited the first 2 guys, the time they were set to clash. Robbed of a fight between them with the knee injury. Horrific that happened to Tom. It's great to see him back. The 2 performances he's had since have been just breathtaking. I mean, literally take your breath away at how good they are. And he can certainly do it again, and he gets to do it in Manchester. What a unique opportunity. But this could be a fight. So I'm intrigued by this. I like the card that they revealed for UFC 304, man. I really do.
And let's be honest here. Tom Aspinall has not faced the level of competition that Curtis Blaydes has.
No,
he hasn't.
100%. No, 100%, because his ascension up into the elite level has been so fast, right? I mean, that he hasn't had all those names in, and Curtis Blaydes has been around, been doing that for a while, fought everybody, a who's who. So I love this fight, man. I'm telling you, I was so excited about the first time it happened. Horrific the way it ended, but more than anything, it just felt like, I mean, look, if Tom Aspinall steamrolls Curtis Blaydes, like,
golly.
Now at that point, and man, oh gosh, and I love the way he's playing the Jon Jones stuff. You know what I mean? He's always been like very respectful in calling the man out, but he's starting to kind of turn the heat up a little bit and kind of, I think, leading into the criticism of the fact that people are like, why is Jones, facing Stipe right now? Why isn't he facing Aspinall? So if he steamrolls Curtis Blaydes before what we think, we've talked about for a long time. It's been looking like Madison Square Garden in November is the spot for Jon Jones, Stipe Miocic. I mean, if Tom Aspinall in late July is able to steamroll Curtis Blaydes and then roll into Madison Square Garden, sit in cage side, and is able to stir the pot a little bit. And he's great on the mic, man. He is great on the mic. He's got great personality. I mean, you might be able to lure, if Jon Jones is victorious that night, you might be able to lure him into saying, hey, don't walk away just yet, son. You got one name that you still need to beat to prove you're still that guy, and it's me. And we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of things that have to happen between then and now, but, I'd love to see it.
Let me throw out a quick scenario before we get out of here.
All right.
He does run through Curtis Blaydes.
Okay.
Now, the Jon Jones Stipe Miocic fight is then technically still 5 months away.
Right.
Would the UFC, because that's almost undeniable at that point.
I know.
And we always say that Stipe does deserve it. And I'm still sitting on that right now. He does deserve it. And Tom Aspinall, albeit knocking out Sergey and whatnot, his rapid descent, he hasn't earned that yet. But if he does steamroll Curtis Blaydes, is the UFC at that point almost obligated to change up plans? Because let's be honest, in full transparency, Stipe ain't fighting again after this. He hasn't fought in 3 years.
No.
Jon Jones fought once in 3. So it's like, okay, are we going to sell out MSG with Stipe and Jon Jones knowing that everybody is looking at like that at a sideshow at that point? I don't think people are looking at it as a sideshow yet. But if Curtis Blaydes does run, or if, Aspinall does run through him, wouldn't the UFC's hand almost be forced at that point?
I mean,
for legitimacy's sake?
It's interesting because if you're talking about what's here, what's now, what's right now, what's the most relevant, I mean, I'd argue, as you said, I know that people aren't looking at it as a sideshow, but the hardcores are saying, I'd much rather see Jon. But I've yet to meet a single person who has told me, you know what the fight I really want to see is Jon and Stipe. I don't care about this Tom Aspinall kid. I've yet to find anybody other than Jon and Stipe who say that the fight they want to see most is Jon and Stipe. Even me, I'll be honest with you. And you know it. I've sat here and I've told you, you just got to understand, bro. These are the two.
But it's
you know what I mean? But it's earned. So it would be. I honestly don't think the UFC would rip it apart just because they've already invested so much time and waiting that they do it. Now, if something happens to either one of those guys, there's no way you push it back. Like if there's an injury or, I'm knocking on wood and not wishing bad upon anybody, but if something like that happens, then absolutely. You got to say, hey, we tried. We did this. We've had this date circled on the calendar.
Aspinall, you don't think that if Aspinall comes out and Sergey's Curtis Blaydes, that they wouldn't be like that, Mick Maynard or, Sean Shelby or Dano or anybody's going to be like, Jon, I can't keep doing this, bro. Like we've had this title in flux for about 1.5 years now. Everybody's claiming that Aspinall's the real champ and you're claiming you're the real champ. I can't wait another year for us to just solidify this championship, because in 5 months you're still planning on taking. I'm still holding my phone. I don't need to because
Jon's on the other end over here going, and he's letting you talk and he's letting you talk, and then
but he goes, I can't wait another year go by, right? And for this to be in flux, and you're always teasing that you're not going to look past Aspinall, and you're this and that, and nobody wants to see that fight now. You have to do it.
You know what, boss? I appreciate the call and I appreciate you reaching out, but I've been thinking about it. I think I'm just done, to be honest with you. I'm cool chilling here in New Mexico, man. I got a really nice house. I like where I live, man. I got a great family, growing family. I mean, I've got all the all-time accomplishments that you really can ever have. So I understand where your position is at, but in that case, I think I'm just done, boss. Appreciate you reaching out. Don't call me again. Click, bye.
That didn't go the way I thought it would.
And then, by the way, let's say you do get John to fight. How does the conversation go with Stipe? How do you let him know that we've made a decision and we've gone another way? And Stipe, we appreciate all your years of service.
Stipe
and yes,
seems to be the most pragmatic gentleman in the entire world. He understands. He wouldn't like it, but he understands. I mean, you disagree? Oh, and by the way, here's 6 zeros just because we love you.
Oh, well, if they're going to hand the man some step-aside money, then maybe we start talking about it. That's what you start saying. You know, we're going a long way.
By the way, that would have to happen.
Oh, you'd have to pay for it. No, listen, I'll be honest with you. Having fun, and it's fun to play through scenarios, but I do stand behind what I say. I think John would just say, you know what, then I'm done. So as much as I was being silly about it, I really do believe that is his point, where it's like, if you want me to fight again, I'm telling you this is who I'm fighting. Otherwise, I've got money in the bank. I don't need this money. It would be nice. I've got recognition as the GOAT. I don't need, so I'm done. So I don't think they'll break it apart. But if something happens to either John or Stipe, and again, I'm going to knock on wood once again because I don't want it to be my fault. If something were to happen to either one of those guys between now and November, you have to put in Tom Aspinall. And I would assume, I don't know.
Make him I would assume you just make him the champion, undisputed, because he's in the interim.
At that point, you'd have to. Yeah, at that point, you'd have to. I mean, if it's John, if something happens to John, then you got to strip John of the title. Not that hasn't been done before. So, I mean, he would be okay with that. So you'd strip him of the title. If something happens to Stipe, then yeah, you just do the fight, and you do it for the undisputed belt. And here's what I was thinking. I was wondering, like, I mean, because I'll be honest with you, if you're sitting there and you're the interim champ, Tom Aspinall, I feel like you got to go to Madison Square Garden ready to weigh 265 pounds and fight. But I don't know if that would be an insult. In fact, I know it would kind of be an insult to be like, will you be our backup? Will you be our backup? I think
Stipe take it.
Boy, that's a great question.
Why would he? Why should he? He wants the legacy Jon Jones. Listen, I get Stipe's position 100%. I ain't coming back for anything. I'm a fireman. I've got $10 million in my bank account. Like, I'm good to go, bro. But you know what? This one means a lot to me. It just does. I'm not fighting that young. I'm not fighting that young dude. Are you nuts?
The only thing would be is if Stipe knows I had this date circled on the calendar, and I'm not sure I can put another date on the calendar. I'm not sure my body will go through another training camp. I'm not sure that my family will let me make these sacrifices and be disconnected as I prepare for this moment. So that's the only reason I could see it. Because you're right. I mean, as amazing as Tom Aspinall is, a win over him at this point does not carry the same type of legacy building moment that beating Jon Jones would be. So I could see Stipe being like, yeah, I'm out too. So it's delicate. It's delicate. It's crazy. It is crazy. Because everybody I know says
more of the emphasis on, like, maybe in July if I don't know. No, I'm good, boss. But damn it, it wasn't supposed to be this supposed to go.
Oh man, a lot of big fights unfolding, man. A lot of big fights unfolding.
Well, on this off weekend, what do you got going on this weekend?
I'm going to be heading out to Philadelphia, 2300 Arena, UFC Fight Pass, Fury Professional Grappling 10. So make sure you keep an eye on that. Luke Fernandez versus Eric Anders, your boy in the main event. That should be a lot of fun. Pat Sabatini is a late addition to the card against Andrew Cockle, who's always very fun to watch. Andre Petrosky is on there as well. So, and as I said, my man CM Punk will be in town to assist me on the microphone as well. So we always have fun with the Fury Professional Grappling events. How about you? What you got going?
Man, I'm on daddy duty, man. I had a baby girl late Wednesday night or early Thursday morning, 1:30 a.m. Thursday. So now we are, me and my wife are outnumbered with kids, 3 kids at the house. All 5 are under and 1 being a newborn. So I got a busy weekend.
Jeez, man. Once you're outnumbered, that's tough, right? Because, like, at least when there's 2 of you, you're like, well, I got this one and you got that one. And now you're like, yeah, but there's a wild card. Who's got the third one?
I'll tell you this, going from 0 to 1 so far, right? So far, going 0 to 1 was way harder than going from 1 to 2.
Okay.
And so far, going 0 to 1 was harder and tougher than going, 2 to 3.
I could see that, right? Because because obviously 0 to 1 is life changing. Like everything changes after that. But then after you've got the routine down and you've got what's happening, what the rotation is, what the schedule should be like. I could see that, but it's a lot of mouths to feed, Eric. I think you need some more jobs, bro. You got a lot of mouths to feed, man. It's time you got to go get some more jobs.
Yeah, I do. And my wife is the greatest stay-at-home mom in the world, so I do have to go get more jobs. I'm taking college donations right now. You can find me on Venmo, Cash App, all the above.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's
so,
amazing.
anyways, man. Well, with that being said, this was a fun episode. We ran through we ran through a few different scenarios here, judging scenarios, and we played matchmaker as well. I don't think we got to finality on either one of them, but just shows how difficult the jobs are. With that being said, for John Morgan, I'm Eric McMahon. Enjoy the fights.